Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 messiest band breakups.
Welcome to the jungle, we got fun and games.
For this list, we'll be looking at music groups that had a difficult separation or lineup change. Even if the band continued performing or later reunited, they still count for this list. From physical fights to lawsuits, these breakups make us wonder how these acts got together in the first place. Did we miss a memorably messy breakup? Please let us know in the comments. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to check out the full song at the link below. Number 20, Pixies. The Pixies were one of the more influential bands of the 80s and 90s alternative scene. Their first run lasted from 1986 to 1993, impacting others like Nirvana. Four albums gave the band success and credibility in an ever-changing music landscape. On the other hand, there were no guarantees about whether they would stick together. Singer Black Francis unceremoniously disbanded the group by delivering the news on a radio interview and then sending faxes to some of the members. Francis didn't seem all that interested in letting the others down gently, opting instead for one of the more impersonal breakups in history. It would take a decade for the indie rockers to reconcile and reform.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
Number 19, The Replacements. Spanning punk and alternative rock, The Replacements spent the 80s going from underground favorites to college radio darlings.
Hurry up! Ain't you had enough of this stuff?
Singer Paul Westerberg led the band through indie and major label efforts, and even an appearance on SNL. Drugs and alcohol plagued the group as they were on the cusp of greater success.
I hate music, it's got too many notes.
After lineup changes and other struggles, everything came to a head at a 1991 live show in Chicago. Band members let their partying days get the best of them as they left the stage, while roadies scrambled to take their place. It took them many years to reunite, with multiple members dying in the interim period.
You leave me for a while. You leave me for a while.
Number 18, Pantera. With the Abbott brothers as its foundation, Pantera provided a vital contribution to the thrash and groove metal scene.
I've got more friends like you, what do I do?
The siblings fought with singer Phil Anselmo through their important years as a legendary touring act. In the 2000s, their lingering feud and struggles with drugs only made things worse as they continued to record albums.
I'm broken.
Anselmo's extended absence from the band left Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul with little option other than to break away. In another case of egos and illicit substances getting the best of them, Pantera broke apart even as they were becoming a less cohesive and productive group. The brothers formed a project called Damage Plan not long after, but Darrell was tragically murdered on stage in 2004. Number 17, The Smashing Pumpkins. Somewhere between grunge and mainstream rock, the Smashing Pumpkins made a name for themselves as a unique alternative band. Billy Corgan ruled the act with an iron fist and served as the main songwriter through all their ups and downs. Drummer Jimmy Chamberlin would leave and rejoin the band after dealing with substance use issues. Corgan himself cited his own personal bouts with depression, while bassist Darcy Retzky also dealt with her own substance problems. Along with a long list of complications, the group's profitability slowed over the course of the 90s. The Smashing Pumpkins dissolved for several years as the remaining members sought a break from the grind. Number 16, Blink-182. From the late 90s to the early 2000s, Blink-182 helped transition pop-punk into a new century.
Say it ain't so, I will not go. Turn the lights off, carry me home.
After After touring their self-titled album, guitarist and singer Tom DeLonge decided to take a break and focus on his family in 2005. We're counting both 2005 and 2014 as breakup years for Blink-182 because they both came down to the same reason.
When I feel like giving up, like my world is falling down.
After reuniting and then leaving once more in 2014, even drummer Travis Barker seemed ticked that his lead singer took off a second time. Despite his towering success as a co-writer for the band, the guitarist wanted to explore other musical projects.
It's your time on me, you're already the voice inside my head.
His work with Angels and Airwaves and interest in extraterrestrials ultimately carried him away from Blink-182. Number 15, The Clash. The Clash led the charge of punk music in the late 70s and early 80s. Singer and songwriter Joe Strummer steered them through different genres and changing membership. Drummer Topper Headon was first kicked out for his substance use. After his absence, Strummer himself acknowledged that their act was never the same. Guitarist and co-writer Mick Jones left in 1983 after the band released their last notable record, Combat Rock. Their final album, Cut the Crap, captured very little of the band's initial energy and signaled the end. Exploring other projects, the various members moved on from the group to varying degrees of commercial and critical attention.
We did our creative work, and we did it all in the space of 5 years. We came and we went. We came, we spoke, and we went. And I like that. As time goes by, I appreciate that more.
Number 14, Deep Purple. Deep Purple were among the most influential bands that kickstarted hard rock and heavy metal in the late 60s. Guitarist Ritchie Blackmore and singer Ian Gillan were just two of the ingredients that helped create iconic tracks like Smoke on the Water. In the early 70s, Gillan went his own way after disagreements with the band's direction. Blackmore followed suit in 1975 after stating that he disliked their latest work. With two key members gone, the group's replacement guitarist couldn't pick up the slack and suffered from substance use disorders along with other members. A new version of Deep Purple didn't reemerge until 1984.
What broke the camel's back? And this really is a soundbite: sex, drugs, and rock and roll, man.
Number 13, The Everly Brothers. Most brothers bicker, and the Everly Brothers were no different. The duo made a name for themselves during the 50s with singles such as All I Have to Do Is Dream and Bye Bye Love.
Bye bye love, bye bye happiness.
Don and Phil were among the most troubled family acts of their era, trying to stay afloat through changing times and label disagreements. Their famous 1973 gig ended their initial run after Phil trashed his guitar and fled the stage. With all of their personal conflicts, it could have been even worse.
I'll do my crying in the rain.
After soldiering through solo careers, the siblings returned to their classic duet status in the 80s. Number 12, The Smiths. The Smiths were among the brightest stars in the British indie rock scene.
A jumped up country boy who never knew his place. He said, return the ring.
Singer Morrissey and guitarist Johnny Marr split the writing duties in a complicated working relationship that spanned 4 studio albums. While they created many memorable tracks, the two veered in different directions as they both matured with the group.
And heaven knows I'm miserable now.
When Marr thought the frontman planted a news article criticizing the band, he left the group even after realizing his theory was incorrect. Later reports indicated a growing chasm between Morrissey and Marr, stifling the latter's creativity. The band ended after their former guitarist left behind a void that could not be filled. Any chance at a reunion remains unlikely, as royalty disputes and other disagreements followed their demise.
I wasn't going, bye, jolly up. It was really devastating for me because I was, I was forced into it. That's the simple way of explaining something very complicated.
Number 11, Pink Floyd. By the end of the 70s, Pink Floyd achieved one of the peaks of their success with The Wall.
No, it's just another brick in the wall.
The next few years proved to be trying for the band as they recovered from grueling touring schedules and troubled recording sessions for the final cut. Not only that, Roger Waters and David Gilmour each wanted to move the group in a different musical direction.
Never had the nerve to make the final cut.
The uncertain times culminated in a pivotal dinner where Waters was left thinking the act was over. Gilmour pressed on with the remaining members and kept using the name, which upset the bassist to no end. The resulting years found each faction playing shows and carrying on their own preferable version of the Pink Floyd legacy. Number 10. N.W.A. Gangsta rap group N.W.A. set the West Coast hip-hop scene on fire with their record Straight Outta Compton. With so many different and independent personalities in the group, it was bound to crumble with each passing day. Ice Cube felt he wasn't receiving the proper recognition or compensation. When he left in 1989, the remaining years were spent trading diss tracks and dealing with infighting.
Looking like straight bozos. I saw it coming, that's why I went solo.
Eazy-E wanted his own solo career free from the collective, and Dr. Dre was ready to produce other acts in the G-Funk era. While the group had an influential few years, they were always destined to go their separate ways.
They'd rather, make me the enemy, and instead of rectifying the situation, and so I left.
Number 9. Rage Against the Machine. Rap rock outfit Rage Against the Machine are the protest act of their era. Their high-energy hard rock music was equally matched by Zach De La Rocha's lyrical content. Internal strife plagued the band as they achieved more attention for their hit studio albums. At the 2000 MTV Video Music Awards, bassist Tim Comerford climbed the set in a stunt that was considered the final nail in the coffin. The outspoken De La Rocha exited the band shortly after. He cited the group's inability to move forward and constant arguments that hindered their artistic progress. Comerford, Tom Morello, and Brad Wilk decided to start another project without their former frontman. Number 8. Van Halen. Van Halen were one of the biggest hard rock acts in the 70s and 80s. Their pro-party attitude earned them many fans, with Eddie Van Halen shredding alongside energetic singer David Lee Roth.
What's that sound? Here she comes, full blasting top down.
As the two major creative forces in the band, they drifted apart in the mid-80s. Roth was exploring his own solo career at the time, which made a potential split inevitable. He finally escaped and spent the next few years arguing with his former colleagues through the media as they hired Sammy Hagar. Over 10 years later, Roth reappeared with the original lineup at the MTV Video Music Awards in a publicity stunt that went nowhere. It was only in 2007 that the Wild frontman officially returned. Number 7. Creedence Clearwater Revival. John Fogerty fused Southern charm, blues, and rock all into one to create Creedence Clearwater Revival. They rocked their way onto the charts with big singles in the late 60s. Wanting to maintain power, the lead singer clashed with the other members who hoped for more inclusion in the writing process. By their final album, Fogerty tried to appease the remaining members of the band with their own songwriting credits.
Not much longer would you be mine.
The lackluster results spelled the end for the original group, prompting bitter lawsuits that ended their chances of ever truly reuniting. Their former leader went on to his own solo success, as his former bandmates later formed Creedence Clearwater Revisited.
If I'd had a clue what was going on, I probably could have figured that out. But, like I say, I did not.
Number 6. Simon and Garfunkel. The most iconic folk rock duo were not brothers, but they certainly fought like them. Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel inspired generations with their hits like The Sound of Silence, despite all of the mutual conflict.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
While Simon wrote the songs, Garfunkel was left to be the singer who followed his partner's lead. This led to a natural rift between the two, as the power structure was called into question. Garfunkel attempted a film career that pushed him farther away from his partner, in a successful attempt to gain more independence. Breaking up in the early 70s, the act eventually put their differences aside for reunion shows throughout the years. Number 5. Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses energized the late 80s as one of the last great hard rock acts of the decade. Lead singer Axl Rose commanded the ship throughout their breakthrough Appetite for Destruction and the Use Your Illusion records.
I'd hate to look into those eyes and see an ounce of pain.
Rose's strong views about the band's direction incited disagreements, pushing away many core members such as Slash.
Oh, won't you please take me home? Yeah.
The frontman's stage antics angered his fellow performers, and drug problems only made everything worse. Once Izzy Stradlin left and other collaborators were fired, it was clear that the group was falling off the rails. The singer took control of the Guns N' Roses name and spent the following years with a revolving door of musicians who barely tolerated him. Number 4. Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac is famous for their classic albums like Rumors, as well as their infamous personal struggles. Their 70s and 80s lineup produced some of the best and most memorable records of the era, despite various feuds among the members. Guitarist Lindsey Buckingham and singer Stevie Nicks were just two of the figures who had an extremely complicated relationship in and out of the band.
You could go your own way. Go your own way.
From the late 80s to the mid-90s, the members started to leave as years of unchecked animosity got the best of them. By 1995, the entire group dissolved only to formally reunite 2 years later. Number 3. Eagles. Among the best-selling bands of all time, the Eagles helped popularize the soft and country rock of the 70s.
We may lose, we may win, but we will never be here again.
No stranger to drama and a rotating cast of characters, the group prospered through some truly volatile years. By the start of the 80s, the tension only got worse as their fame was at an all-time high. When Don Felder insulted Senator Alan Cranston at a fundraising concert, Glenn Frey let all of his aggression out. The two exchanged threats on stage and left the show having effectively broken up. While Felder was invited to their first reunion tour, he was fired in the 2000s. Lawsuits between the guitarist and his former mates continued as Don Henley and other surviving members went on without him.
Clubs, I know. I'd still be playing music somewhere. I'd be doing it even if it wasn't on this grand a scale.
Number 2. The Beatles. Having the most discussed breakup in music history, the Beatles prompted countless books and documentaries about the real reason they called it quits.
Don't let me down.
The four were drifting apart and contemplating their own independence from each other well before their official collapse. After having a rocky time managing themselves and Apple Records, the group were told by a disinterested John Lennon that he would be leaving in 1969.
Can you remember when you realized that it was inevitable that you would split up?
No.
First,
No, it's
was
like
there anyone-
saying, you know,
Yeah.
did you remember falling in love? Not quite,
Yeah.
no. It just sort of happens.
The announcement was kept secret as the remaining members considered the future of the band. A year later, the Beatles released their last album, Let It Be, and officially folded. They then spent the early 70s working on music that heavily referenced their sour relationships with each other.
Really sorry that you've been misled, but like you heard me said, I'm not guilty.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Oasis. Most music rivalries pale in comparison to the one between Noel and Liam Gallagher. The brothers from Manchester always had a bad relationship in Oasis, clashing about everything from their image to their artistic direction.
How many special people change? How many lives are living strange?
Even as they achieved international success with the What's the Story Morning Glory album, the Gallaghers still got into frequent arguments. One backstage altercation in 2009 proved to be the culmination of all their bad blood. After Noel confronted the singer about not being able to perform, his brother destroyed a guitar, and the two got into a fight that effectively ended Oasis. Despite countless offers to reunite, neither sibling wants to get the band back together.
You must have some idea why you split up.
No,
Was it all on him?
Maybe I might have been a bit too rock and roll for him and that, and I might have cancelled a few gigs and that, and I might have stayed up later than I should have some nights, but, you know, we're not S***ing Club 7, that's what you do.
Do you agree with our picks? Let us know in the comments. And hey, if you're a fan of the song playing right now, be sure to check out the music video for it right here.